President Biden speaking in Pennsylvania today, touting his new plan to get more workers overtime pay. He told union workers the economy is improving despite what they hear on the news. Polling shows Americans aren't sure. Small business owners still say they are uncertain about their future as threats like inflation and retail theft loom. Gene Marks, CPA, small business expert and president of the Marks Group, joins us now. Gene, great to have you here today. We just heard the president touting his new proposal to pay workers who make less than $55,000 a year overtime. That's a bump of about $20,000 from the current levels. Quick thought on what the president said and how that might impact people.
So it's kind of brutal, Anita. Let me explain to you what's going on with small businesses right now, the people across all industries that I speak to and my clients, right? Since the pandemic, small businesses are looking at costs of anywhere from 15 to 40% higher. Costs of construction materials, food, costs for utilities, shipping, manufacturing. On top of all of that, Anita, our interest costs, the prime rate used to be 3.25%, only less than a year and a half ago. It's now 8.5%, which means that if you're a small business looking to, borrow money, particularly from a traditional bank, you're looking at a giant increase in your cost of capital. And because of that, a lot of banks are pulling back on loaning to banks, to small businesses. So we've got a higher cost of materials for run our businesses. We've got much higher interest costs and costs of capital. And as just shown in this past week, the National Federation of Independent Businesses reported that job openings among small businesses are now at their lowest level in the past 2 years because they're struggling under these costs. Mm-hmm. So raising more costs with this new regulation for overtime, it's brutal, Anita. It really is. And it's going to impact a lot of small businesses around the country.
Yeah, it seems like a long list of things is really impacting them, as you mentioned. The jobs report came out on Friday. That was viewed as pretty positive. That's the way it was received. But many small businesses, restaurants in particular, are still struggling since before COVID. There are some examples I read about restaurants in Philadelphia that have only added 1,100 jobs since before the pandemic. They can't hire anyone. They're looking for qualified managers. They can't pay people the salaries they're demanding. So now they're offering other perks like health insurance, other retirement benefits, but really they can only do so much. Are these things going to entice people, do you think, or are people mostly just looking for the highest salary they can get?
Well, first of all, that was my article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and it was fun to write because they're good, hardworking people that I interviewed for that piece. And they're struggling with compensation costs. I mean, there's only so much that a restaurant can pay. Like I said earlier, so many of their core costs, particularly for food and rent, have gone up significantly over the past 2 years. So one of the things that a lot of businesses are doing is they're working really hard to retain their employees. Rather than adding them, how can we get more out of our existing workers? And the second thing that I also learned by that piece, Anita, is that the really smart restaurant owners were really providing a really good workplace for their employees. They were listening to them. They were giving them feedback. One advantage that a lot of small businesses have, and it's a big one, is that we are more flexible. You do have a chance to work for the boss, and you really can offer a better place to work than big corporations that are out there. And I think not enough small businesses take advantage of that. They need to, because they're competing against those big corporations in an era of really high compensation costs and materials costs. They got to do what they can do to keep their good employees around and make the workplace a friendly place to work.
Yeah, well, that is one way to do it. I mean, people do want to enjoy their workplace. They have to spend a lot of time there. So I guess if the business owners can't offer the higher salaries and other things, they can at least offer a nice place to work. The president, we heard him, he keeps talking about how Bidenomics is working for people. But we hear from people saying, actually, it's not working, and business owners saying it's not working. So what is the president talking about? What do you think he means when he says it's working? How is it working?
I think he means that he's spending trillions of dollars right now on infrastructure, on chip manufacturing facilities, on climate-friendly and green environmental projects as well, which is supposed to generate more jobs. Most of my clients are not seeing that yet because it takes a while for that money to actually get out there in circulation. But what we have been seeing from this administration, Anita, is a very, very pro-worker administration. You mentioned earlier in this discussion about the overtime rules, which is going to be more costly for small small businesses. This year, the Department of Labor is likely coming out with more rules that will force more small businesses to reclassify their independent contractors as employees, which costs them a lot of money. OSHA, for example, has increased its fine on businesses and increased the types of penalties they're doing. The EEOC is very, very active in discrimination and harassment rules, and now giving employees the ability to report small businesses directly on their website. And you mentioned earlier about unionization. I mean, the National Labor Relations Board has made it much easier for unions to organize and to attract employees to them, which increase costs for, obviously, businesses. It's a very pro-worker administration right now, and it's a lot of challenging issues that it presents to small businesses. And they're not seeing the benefits of whatever he's calling Bidenomics right now. It's just they're just seeing more regulations. That's what I'm seeing with my clients.
Real quick, quick answer on this. You talked about before all of the costs that small businesses are having to incur, particularly with inflation. They have to pay more to get their goods. Any sign of that coming down? What do you think when you look into the crystal ball?
I can see right now, the good news is that inflation is tempered. Producer prices now are around 3%. I mean, they were up near 10 or 11% over a year and a half ago. So that is a sigh of relief to a lot of businesses. But we're in disinflation period right now, which means that costs aren't coming down. It's just the rate of inflation is just less than it was before. So amidst all of these increasing costs, they're still going up. We're still dealing with that. So if you're a customer and you're going to a small merchant or you're going to a restaurant and you're like looking at the menus or the prices, they're so much higher than they were before, please know that these merchants and businesses are dealing with much higher cost structures. And now, because of this environment in Washington, a lot higher regulatory costs as well. It's very, very tough right now. Yeah,
no doubt. Well, hopefully we'll see some improvement in the future. I
hope so.
Hope so. Hey, Gene, thanks for coming in today, and we really appreciate your insight.
Thanks, Anita. You take care.